Alan Dershowitz, during the Clinton proceedings in 1998, says it's, quote, certainly doesn't have to be a crime to be impeachable. And then now that he's one of President Trump's impeachment attorneys, trying to explain away those inconsistencies. He's more right now, he says. Joining us now, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Democratic Congressman Jerry Nadler of New York. He serves as one of the impeachment prosecutors. Also with us, MSNBC chief legal correspondent and host of The Beat on MSNBC, Ari Melber. Claire McCaskill and Mike Barnicle are back with us as well as Joe, Willie, and me.
And so, Congressman Nadler, Alan Dershowitz laying it out very clearly in '99. To be impeached, you don't have to commit a crime. And you just, maybe it just comes down to an abuse of power. Well, latest poll shows that 6 in 10 of Americans believe that Donald Trump abused his power. Shouldn't that be enough to move towards impeachment on the Senate side, conviction on the Senate side?
Well, it certainly should be enough. Abuse of power is the worst crime. You know, when the Constitution was written, there were no crimes because they had not passed any crimes. Congress didn't exist. Bribery, for instance, was not made a federal crime until 1837. So the fact of the matter is, every constitutional scholar, everyone knows, if you read the Federalist Papers, if you read the debates of the Constitutional Convention, they were talking about abuses of power as the worst conceivable crime that a president could commit, to betray the country by using the power of the office of president for other than the national reasons, for betrayal or for personal reasons, or to betray the country to a foreign power. That was the worst thing the framers could imagine. And that, of course, is what's involved here. The president sought to get a foreign power, or the Ukraine, involved in our elections. Now, when I saw Professor Dershowitz's comment that you have to have a violation of the criminal code to be an abuse of power, to be constitutionally suspect, to be constitutionally impeachable, I thought he was merely ignorant. Now that I see his 1999 quote, I know he's lying.
So, Chairman Nadler, you're cited in President Trump's Senate trial brief, which outlines the president's defense arguments. On page 3, the brief says, quote, contrary to House Democrats' claims, asserting legal rights and constitutional privileges of the executive branch is not obstruction. In 1998, now Chairman Jerrold Nadler agreed that a president cannot be impeached for asserting a legal privilege. The use of a legal privilege is not illegal or impeachable by itself. A legal privilege, executive privilege. How do you respond to that?
Well, he's talking apples and oranges. There are legal privileges. The Supreme Court ruled in the Nixon case in 1974 that such a thing as executive privilege exists. But the Supreme Court also ruled in that same ruling that when accused of a crime, the privilege must give way. It doesn't exist. But beyond that, the Article 2 that we have voted of the impeachment is not that he asserted privileges. It's that he completely stonewalled Congress and denied all congressional requests for information. He said, he gave a directive that said to every department, no one may testify to Congress. 12 people defied his orders and testified before the Intelligence Committee. But the fact is, that is obstruction of Congress. Every President Nixon's impeachment, one of the articles was obstruction. One of the articles was abuse of power. In fact, every president who's ever been impeached, the accusation was abuse of power. And here, I mean, that's just a nonsense position that they're taking.
Mr. Chairman, it's Willie Geist. It's good to see you this morning. I think you and we all knew coming in that under Mitch McConnell's rules of this trial, there would be a vote to see if there would be new witnesses introduced and allowed in the Senate trial. I think what was more surprising when the rules were presented yesterday is that Mitch McConnell wants a vote on the question of even introducing the evidence, the testimony, the documents that are already existed in the House and bringing them into the Senate trial, so that you may not even have that evidence before you in the Senate. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that is that it's more of the same. And the same is that Mitch McConnell and apparently most of the Republicans, or many of them, want to subvert the Constitution and to betray the American people by saying you can't have a fair trial, or any trial really, when the House has impeached the president. Anybody knows, any intelligent person knows, that if someone is accused of a crime, whether that crime is robbing a bank or subverting the Constitution, you bring in all relevant witnesses. You bring in all the witnesses in prosecution, in defense, and for the agents of the defendant, in this case McConnell and company, to say we won't permit witnesses is to say we won't have a fair trial and we are betraying the Constitution.
But Ari, it's not just we won't bring in new witnesses. It's we won't bring in the evidence that we already saw in the House into the Senate trial. We won't let the old evidence in. Forget the new evidence.
Right, which is part of the White House's new attack on the validity, they say, of the underlying impeachment probe and the material it found. Chairman Nadler, Ari Melber here, thanks for joining us on a busy day.
Thank
for
you.
Appreciate it. So two follow-up points here on what you're saying, because the news breaking overnight is the McConnell rules. As discussed, two of the controversial changes is not necessarily automatically including the material from the House, and really raising the bar for even having the Senate deliberate and then decide on whether to add witnesses. My question to you on those rule changes is, number one, is there any actual formal result or consequence of not having that material, quote unquote, in the record, or does it not materially change the debate you're about to have? And number two, how do you view the attempt to make it harder to bring in witnesses, which, depending on how you read these new McConnell rules, may or may not change the original rules and may or may not make it harder for individual senators to call for individual witness votes? Your views on both of those matters?
Well, this is just more more ways in which Senator McConnell is trying to prevent the American people from seeing the travesty that he wants to perpetrate. They don't want to allow any evidence in front of the American people. Whether the evidence was already offered in the House or is newer evidence is not the point. They want to stop all evidence from being seen by the American people, from being seen on television, from being presented to the Senate, because they are covering up for the president. They're not pretending to have a trial as the Constitution demands or as fairness demands. They're just covering up for the president, period. And this is just more of the same, and it's shameless.
Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jerry Nadler, thank you very much for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.